With us getting a brand new Scream film this week, I figured let's head back to the heyday of the 80s and talk about a slasher film. Let's get back to my channel. I hope you're all doing well out there. And this is the week, folks. Scream 6 drops across this country Thursday evening. I'm going to see it Thursday night with my buddy Dale_A from the Bat and Spider podcast. So check back to my channel Thursday night or Friday morning. I'm going to upload my non-spoiler out of the theater reaction. And since Scream kicked off and brought slashers back to the forefront in the 90s, I figured let's go back to the 80s and talk about a slasher film. And this one is called Intruder. But before we talk about Intruder, do me a favor, like, comment, and subscribe. Join me here, I would appreciate that. Intruder dropped on home video because it didn't ever go in theatrical. It went straight to video on January 13th of 1989. The R-rated cut is an hour and 23 minutes long. Now, you don't want to see the R-rated cut. You want to see the unrated cut. Well, you're lucky. It's on Tubi right now to watch, and the transfer is pretty good. And the unrated cut's an hour and 28 minutes long. You want to see it all of its gory glory. So yes, Tubi, never change. You're freaking awesome. So this movie was picked up by Charles Band's company in the 80s to be released theatrically, actually. That was the plan, but Charles Band's distribution arm went bankrupt. And this is one of the movies he took with him when he started up Full Moon Pictures. And he ended up selling it off to Paramount to release direct-to-video. And Paramount, for some reason, I don't know, since they're releasing it direct-to-video, they required them to cut it down to get an R rating. Why, if it's going direct-to-video, I have no clue. But they cut it down for the home video release. And in the mid-2000s, they released a DVD, which I do own, but it's in storage, so I didn't get to watch it on my DVD. And they released it unrated. And that's definitely the cut you want to watch. But it's on Tubi for free, so check it out. Now, this film was co-written and directed by Scott Spiegel, who is very good friends with Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell. They used to make films in Michigan when they were younger. And he actually shot a short film based around the same concept when he lived in Michigan. But he lost that film. And years later, he wanted to step up and direct his own film, feature-length film. And he just incorporated a lot of those ideas and wrote the script for this. Now, Lawrence Bender co-wrote the script with him, and that name might sound familiar because he produced a little film called Reservoir Dogs, and then Pulp Fiction, and then Jackie Brown, and then Inglourious Bastards, and Kill Bill 1 and 2, amongst other films. So he became a big Hollywood producer, especially with Quentin Tarantino. In this film, we have Liz Kern as Jennifer. She works at the supermarket that this whole movie takes place in, and she's a cashier. And Renee Estevez is also another worker at the supermarket. She plays Linda, and she was in Sleepaway Camp 2. She was in a lot of other things, but horror-wise, she was in Sleepaway Camp 2. David Burns plays Craig, and he is Jennifer's ex-boyfriend who went to prison for some pretty bad things, and he happens to show up on this night where all this stuff goes down. Dan Hicks plays Bill. He is co-owner of this supermarket, and Dan Hicks was in Evil Dead 2. He was one of the characters in Evil Dead 2. Sam Raimi's in this film as Randy the Butcher. Ted Raimi, his brother, is in this as Joe, the produce manager. Bruce Campbell shows up at the end and as a police officer, and so does Lawrence Bender in a quick cameo at the end of the film, which we'll get to. This movie is straight up /80s slasher goodness because it takes place in one location, a supermarket. It takes place in the store and just outside the store, and that's it. You don't see anything else but those locations, and Scott Spiegel milks the location for every ounce he can. I think he must have shot every angle inside of this supermarket because he actually filmed this in a real supermarket. It was a defunct supermarket, but everything, all the shelves and the cash registers were still there, just no food. And Lawrence Bender made a deal with a company, and he bought a lot of dented stuff and stuff that was getting ready to get thrown. And they stocked the supermarket with all these products to make it look like it's a fully functional supermarket, which it does. They pulled it off beautifully considering they only had a $130,000 budget on this film, and they shot it all in 2 weeks. So basically, it's a very simple premise. This crew, the store closes, and this crew, the owner, there's two owners, Dan Hicks's character, Bill, and this other owner. The other owner owns the majority of the supermarket, and he lets them know that he needs them to stay and mark everything down because they're selling the store. And Bill's not too happy about this, but Bill's very jovial and he's very friendly with all the workers. He hangs out with them on break time, which I'll talk about in a second. And they go around, they start marking everything down, and we see them doing different jobs. But before they closed, Craig showed up, and he got into a fight with some of them, and they got him out of the store. They called the cops, and they lock the doors. But Craig is lingering about outside, looking in through the window and staring very creepily in at Jennifer. And it gets a little, definitely stalker vibes going on. And pretty soon, people start getting killed off. And when they have their break time, Bill's there and he tells this story. I'm going to bring this up because it's actually a pretty cool story, even in trivia-wise. He tells this story about how he used to work for this volunteer fire department, and it was this bad accident. And one of the guys on his crew took a burger with him to the accident, and the guy that was in the accident got his head cut off. His head came off. And they said he turned around, and here comes this guy walking down the road with the head of the guy in one hand and still eating the burger in the other. Well, we see that recreated later by the killer in this film, which ends up being Bill, because he goes crazy because the other owner is going to sell the supermarket off underneath him, and he's not happy. So his plan is to kill everyone, blaming on Craig. He sees his opportunity because Craig was already arrested and spent time in prison, so the cops would naturally think it was him because he killed a guy before this, supposedly accidentally. So that's Bill's whole plan. And there's even, they recreate the scene when it's just him and Jennifer in the store. He's walking down eating a sandwich, holding the one worker's head in his hand, recreating what he told them earlier. I thought that was a pretty cool callback. And basically, at the end of the film, Craig helps Jennifer, and Jennifer stabs Bill a bunch of times outside the supermarket in his phone booth, and he's dying, and the cops show up, Bruce Campbell, Lawrence Bender, and they start arresting Jennifer and Craig, and Bill points to them and says, "They did it, officers. They killed everyone. They killed everyone." He dies, and they're getting ready to get taken off to jail because the cops think it was them. And that's how Intruder ends. Very simple story here. Very, very much a splatter film. The high body count. I mean, I think 9 people die, but they all die in very gory ways. Sam Raimi gets a hook up through his jaw like this, and he's hanging about. They see him a few times. Very gory stuff. Some guys get their head cut off, hands cut off. There's a guy that gets his head cut off. A bandsaw goes right through his head, and they show it. And K&B did the effects for this film. This was their first film where they were actually in charge of everything. They've always done a lot of films, but they were never the ones that were in charge of all the effects. They were the only ones, and they asked for only $700 a piece, and they did all the effects in this film, and they all look really damn good. And they throw the blood around very liberally, and it's wonderful. It's a very gory film, very fun slasher. Definitely a sense of cheesiness and a fun tone to it, even though Bill's absolutely out of his fucking mind. But once it's revealed, I mean, Dan Hicks chews the shit out of the scenery. He's very effective in this role as this guy that just is pissed at his partner selling the business, and he's not happy about it, and he just decides to kill everybody so he can keep the store for himself and try to blame Craig. I like the twist ending where they're getting arrested and the cops think it's them. Who knows if that would have kept that way, but that's the way the movie ends. The gore effects come off beautifully. There's actually some really interesting angles in this film and really interesting POV shots. Very Sam Raimi-esque. Scott Spiegel must have been very influenced by Sam. And Sam was obviously on set for some of this because he's in the freaking movie. But the acting's okay. Sam Raimi's actually all right in this film, and Ted Raimi's always fun to pop up. Everybody else is okay here. Dan Hicks is the scene stealer because he's the one that gets the biggest and the most flashy role as the killer, and this guy is just out of his freaking mind trying to keep his store. The original title of the movie was The Night Crew because they're working at night trying to mark everything down. The head in his hand, and he walks and he's eating the thing. The reason that's in this film, it's actually in Raising Arizona, and Scott Spiegel had heard this story before, and he told Sam Raimi. Sam Raimi told to the Coen brothers, and they put it in Raising Arizona. And Scott Spiegel was a little pissed about that, but he said, "Screw it, I'm going to use it in this film anyway," and he used it here, and it works beautiful. Because I like how he sets it up early. He tells them the story, and then he actually does it when he's stalking Jennifer throughout the store. It's fantastic. The market in the store was based on a real supermarket in Michigan. This was filmed in California, but the Walnut Lake market in Michigan. They actually filmed Scott Spiegel's short there after the store closed. They snuck in and they shot his short there when they shot it originally. And Scott Spiegel actually cameos in this film as the bread delivery guy who gets killed very quickly as Jennifer's asking for help. And Bill comes up behind him and stabs him in the back. This isn't the greatest slasher film, but it's a very fun, very fat. It takes a little bit to get going, but once it does, it zips through the rest of the film. And again, they use every square inch of that supermarket. And so one location, pretty much type of movie. But it's a fun one. It's a very fun slasher film that came late in the game. I mean, this was when the success of slasher films was going down, 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 down. If this got a theatrical release, it probably would have made its money back. It only cost $130,000, but it went straight to video. But now we can watch it in its unrated glory. It's on Tubi if you want to check it out. It's definitely worth checking out if you're a slasher fan. At the end of the day, this isn't a perfect film, but it's a really well done, fun slasher film with some interesting angles, some interesting POV shots, some well done gore effects. And if you love slasher films, I suggest checking out. Again, it's free on Tubi. You can watch it. At the end of the day, this is the first time I've seen this movie in probably 10 years, maybe a little bit longer. And I was thinking about it all day what my rating was going to be, because it's not a perfect film. It's not even a great film, but it's a solidly made exploitation slasher film. At the end of the day, I had so much fun with it. I'll give it a 7 out of 10. A 7 out of 10 for Intruder. If you've ever seen Intruder, leave a comment down below. Let me know. Hit the thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button. Share this video. I would appreciate that. I'll be back later in the week with a non-spoiler out of theater reaction video for Scream 6. But until then, bye.